I have noticed as Polis has entered officially his lame duck status, it's his final year. He seems to be shooting a little bit more from the hip, it seems. You know, Twitter's not real life. I noticed from his personal account, he started saying things that have caught him all sorts of flack from his own team that he wouldn't have said in years past. And normally, like you said, he's been sort of cowed in by the more progressive wing of his base. He's tried to play nice with them, even though he's not a true believer like they are. But now he seems to just be firing from the hip. And
he seemed to be happy Maduro was out of in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I saw that on X. I was like, what? You said this? And it's like, because I think he believes that.
Right.
But you can't be a progressive and say that.
Immediately, you saw Democratic lawmakers responding to that message saying, are you kidding me, Governor? Do you want to add anything to this? How are you endorsing this terrible thing that Trump did? And he never responded. He just, like you said, I think he truly believed, and he was grateful to see Maduro leave.
Which makes me wonder, if the Labor Peace Act gets attacked again, will he veto it again? I assume he would. If there's more legislation on fees, will he finally stand up? A new legislative session is about to start, or starting, depending on when you watch this. Let's find out what's going to happen. But first, subscribe to our channel, like our channel, click that little bell icon for notifications. Find this podcast on your favorite listening app. Jake Fogleman, what's going to be the surprise of the session?
Well, first I want to say, make a comment on, yes, it's that time of year again. We're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed from our holiday break. And, just when we're feeling relaxed and at ease, boom, another legislative session where we all have to be constantly at each other's throats and anxious. This year is, I think, going to be a fairly interesting one. It's obviously an election year, but beyond that, it is the final year in Governor Jared Polis's second term as governor. And I think you're going to see some interesting dynamics at play with that as the Democrats look towards a succession plan for the governor. And you've already seen, in past sessions, little cleavages start to, show up in the caucus with your more progressives and your so-called moderates or pro-business Democrats. And I really think you're going to see that on display this session. I just have a
Is it fair to put it into my terms, which is there is a friggin' civil war brewing inside the Democratic movement in Colorado, Democratic Party. And sooner or later, it's going to spill out. And sooner or later, the mainstream media is going to go, we actually have to cover this now, instead of just reporting on Republican buffoonery.
Well, you're a little more sanguine about what the mainstream media is going to cover than maybe I am. But yes, I would agree with your diagnosis that there has been a long simmering civil war happening as Democrats have consolidated more and more power down there at the Capitol. It's one of those things that kind of comes with essentially one party rule. Is suddenly you can't really pick at the other team. You got to pick at yourselves and struggle over power.
My read in it is that there are a lot of sensible Democrats out there who are not communists. They're not socialists, but they refuse to stand up to the communists and socialists. Our governor being a great example of that, because the communists and socialists, they're part of a revolution, and they will take you out at the knees. They will cancel you. They will, it's not, well, two people disagreeing about politics. No, this is a religion to them, and they'll take you out. And because of that, good Democrats have been scared to death over these years, including our governor. I'm curious, on his last session, will he stand up and finally go, no, Colorado's economy still needs to be saved?
To me, that is one of the things to watch, one of the defining things to watch this upcoming session. Just sort of reading the tea leaves and looking at the scene, I have noticed as Polis has entered officially his lame duck status, it's his final year, he seems to be shooting a little bit more from the hip, it seems. Twitter's not real life. I know a lot of people aren't on Twitter, but I noticed from his personal account, he started saying things that have caught him all sorts of flack from his own team that he wouldn't have said in years past. And normally, like you said, he's been sort of cowed in by the more progressive wing of his base. He's tried to play nice with them, even though he's not a true believer like they are. But now he seems to just be firing from the hip. And
he seemed to be happy Maduro was out of in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I saw that on X. I was like, what? You said this? And it's like, because I think he believes that.
Right.
But, you can't be a progressive and say that.
Immediately, you saw Democratic lawmakers responding to that message saying, are you kidding me, Governor? Do you want to add anything to this? How are you endorsing this terrible thing that Trump did? And he never responded. He just, like you said, I think he truly believed, and he was grateful to see Maduro leave.
Which makes me wonder, if the Labor Peace Act gets attacked again, will he veto it again? I assume he would.
Yep.
If there's more legislation on fees, will he finally stand up? I don't know. Before we get to the energy part, what are the major issues that you think are going to pop up? Obviously, the budget and the fight over the budget. What's going to happen?
I think it's going to be a theme of deja vu when it comes to policy, because once again, we're all talking about the massive budget deficit that we're facing going into this session. Medicaid is eating everything else up that we do. So we have to figure out where we're going to check the couch cushions to cut things. And then
without looking into Medicaid itself.
Well, that's right.
And after watching what has happened in Minnesota and other places, you think maybe we ought to take a look into the program that costs us the most money here.
And is rapidly crowding out everything else that we want to do and all the core functions of government that even folks like you and I agree the government should be spending money on.
You mean like, I don't know, occasionally repaving a road? Maybe just once a decade?
Just maybe fix our damn roads, maybe you've heard that slogan a time or two. So yes, that's going to be one of the big themes. Again, the Labor Peace Act, we may see that come again. My suspicion is they'll probably try, but they know it's not going to go through this time because of Governor Polis. But I think they're biding their time and laying the groundwork for whoever ends up replacing Governor Polis. I think the progressives behind that assume whoever, whether it's Phil Weiser or Michael Bennett or whoever, is going to happily sign that into law. So we may or may not see a serious effort there. We are going to see some energy stuff, and this is where there's sort of a bifurcation with what Polis's relationship with the legislature is. We could see him, as you say, maybe be a little more vocal and stand up to the more progressive wing of his party and say, hey, we need to hold the line. Or you may see them work together on the areas where Polis has always sort of aligned with them, and one of them being energy. Late last session, I think there was 3 weeks left in the legislative session, there was a draft bill circulating, apparently pushed by Governor Polis and the Colorado Energy Office to speed up the state's net zero mandate. Currently, by 2050, the entire Colorado economy is required to go to zero carbon emissions. There was a draft bill that would have moved that up an entire decade to 2040, and it was circulated, it was about to be introduced, a bunch of business leaders, everyone said, what the hell are you doing? There's only 3 weeks left, this is a monumental bill, do not do this. They pulled it, but they've been already holding stakeholder meetings talking about bringing that back this session, and so that's one of those ones where...
Can I help me here? Let me do this expression. Help me understand this. Let's just go with 2050.
Okay.
All right, that's 25 years from now.
Yes.
That's so far away, we can easily transition to a zero carbon energy program there. And I was just thinking of, I don't know, the foundries up in Loveland that melt bronze and turn them into these beautiful statues. They're going to have to figure out how to do this with electricity, not natural gas. The breweries that use natural gas to make beer and spirits and all the rest, every restaurant is going to have to take care of. Every park and recs department that has a swimming pool that is heated is heated with a gas water heater because it's mammoth. So when you say zero, I don't think people understand the power of zero.
Right.
It reminds me of Hickenlooper saying, in 10 years, we're going to get rid of all homelessness.
That's right.
What was that? 20 years ago.
That's right.
And then he said the most obnoxious thing. He said, well, nobody took us seriously. It's like, you put it in a freaking law. You taxed us. You spent all this money. You bankrupted the city, and you made it worse. This seems exactly the same. There is no friggin' way to have no carbon emissions and keep people alive in this state.
You're right, it is similar, but the one thing I will say is that the folks that are pushing this are even more true believers about this stuff than they were about the homelessness. Hickenlooper could get away with saying, yeah, no one took us seriously. It's good to have North Star goals. These people are fanatical about reaching this goal, and maybe we can get into it later in the show, but we've seen this with recent PUC regulations that they're pushing to get there to that point. But you mentioned the foundries and the heavy industry and all these stuff that are hard to decarbonize. Another piece of that people I think are underestimating is transportation. Getting there by 2050 means no more gas cars. It means no more gas trucks, so semi-trucks. Means no more gas buses. All of that stuff is going to have to somehow be electric in 25 years.
Every bus in RTD's fleet is going to have to be,
right.
And it can't go to natural gas or propane buses because that's still,
And you've already seen RTD pushing away from, they were starting to do some electric buses, some pilot programs, and they're starting to say, no, we're going to go back to gas a little bit for right now because it's cheaper to operate and more reliable for us. So
let's go to Boulder Valley School District, being virtue signaling, bought all electric buses, and then found out, oh, they don't work going up the mountains to our schools in the mountains. We're going to have to buy brand new gasoline-powered buses. So there is technology that doesn't even exist that is going to. So what? Pardon me while I do my expression one more time. So let me see if I understand this. If we wanted to solve carbon emissions worldwide, which I think is why we're doing this, we could take our natural gas, which is plentiful here in Colorado, bottle it up, send it either to China to replace a coal-fired power plant, or to Africa or in Asia to replace people who cook over wood stoves and dung open fires, and give them a little propane stove, and it would do so much more for the planet. But these people believe in climate change and the war on that they don't want to achieve their own goal of reducing carbon emissions worldwide. They just want to destroy Colorado's economy and make sure Colorado has zero, while the rest of the world and China keeps building a new power plant every other day.
No, that's exactly right. They're very much an outlier in their perspective here, because you even saw, I mean, the Biden administration, when it was in place, also wanted to crack down on things like our natural gas exports to allies. They did that dubious natural gas ban, which was subsequently replaced by President Trump. And the Trump administration is very intentional about trying to use American natural gas as a geopolitical tool, and also to improve
the lives of billions of people.
That's right.
Oh, and by the way, save the environment.
That's right.
Reduce the carbon footprint
That's right.
of the planet.
And you've even seen some federal Democrats get on board with that in the wake of Trump's reelection, saying, yes, on net, even though we may not like fossil fuels, we can see the argument that, yes, replacing coal somewhere else with our American-produced natural gas not only is a boon economically for our domestic producers, but it's good for the environment too. Not so in Colorado, unfortunately.
Let me ask you an interpretive question. The people who are pushing net zero carbon and trying to push it up even a decade earlier, do they understand this? I mean, are they so stupid that they don't understand the basic mathematics that if you want to reduce global emissions, we can do so much more easily and without destroying our economy by changing what we're doing? We can get to the goal you say you want. Do they know this? Or is it just a massive cognitive dissonance that they can't see?
I think it's what the writer Rob Henderson calls a luxury belief. It's something that people in wealthy first world countries and first world areas of the state say that, well, we were able, here in Boulder, for instance, I'll pick on Boulder, we were able to put solar panels on our homes. We were able to afford the batteries for our homes. Why can't Africa just skip all the steps that we did to get rich, skip all that, we'll just give them wind and solar. They don't even have to bother with our American natural gas. I think that's the mindset. It's that they're such true believers about this path.
To set up a family with a portable propane stove, it costs like $35.
Right.
Compared to, $20,000 for the other. And the statistic that got me, and Ann Hyatt told me this when the numbers, that if we were to replace the 2.3 billion people who still cook over dung and broken up wood, they spend about 5 hours a day collecting twigs, and if we replaced them with propane, it would reduce as much greenhouse gases as if we ended all air travel, all boat travel, and all rail travel worldwide.
Right.
And we're thinking, isn't that what you guys want?
Right.
So why are they working against their own goals? And they're not that stupid. They have to see that they're working against their own stated mission.
Yeah, no, like I said, I really think they're just true believers. They've bought their own dogma about this. That we've talked about this on shows past, that wind and solar are the cheapest forms of electricity on the grid today, and wind is free and the sun is free, so shouldn't the rest of the world benefit from this great technology that we've had here? And I really do think that they sincerely believe that, and that's why don't bother with the natural gas, don't bother with these low-hanging fruit things that we can do to not only improve the material conditions of the world's poor, but improve the environment as well. They say, don't bother with that. We've got the solution already, and we're not going to deviate from that solution.
And the argument that an electric car has a bigger carbon footprint when you bring in the manufacturing of cars, that doesn't matter either. And that the rare earth minerals and that we're empowering China and we're empowering slave labor and child labor, that doesn't.
To me, that goes back to the luxury beliefs thing. That's out of sight, out of mind. Mrs. Boulder can just go to the Tesla dealership or whatever and pick up her shiny new clean electric vehicle and feel good about it, and doesn't have to think about the extraction of all those nasty materials by child laborers in Africa or the Congo somewhere, or to say nothing about the CCP getting rich off of some of the battery technology that goes into these vehicles. Out of sight, out of mind. Don't need to think about it. All you need to think about is that I have a nice electric vehicle.
Jake Fogleman is the head of our director of research, but I want to also introduce him as the co-host of our sister program, Power Gab, which you can watch on IITV3 on YouTube and other places. What is Power Gab?
So Power Gab is designed to be, and I think it still is, the only state-focused podcast in Colorado dedicated purely to Colorado energy and environmental policy. So I co-host.
I think it's really the only one in the country that deals with a state policy issue.
As far as I'm aware, yeah. Right. I'm not aware of another program like it.
So if you're a energy policy junkie,
right,
you have to watch Power Gab.
Yes.
You have to. And that's why it has, 3 million viewers?
There are dozens of us, John. There are dozens of us.
But it is amazing that the viewership is obviously very targeted.
Yeah.
But if you're into this, Power Gab, you and Amy Cook put on the show once a week. You can listen to it on podcast. You can watch it on YouTube on our channel. All right. So let's get back to the session and energy.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the PUC's latest ruling on natural gas, because this goes into that whole fantasy that Colorado can work without natural gas. Not a heated swimming pool anywhere, not a kitchen, nothing.
Yep. This also is a story about the separation of Polis from the rest of his creation, shall we say, because what happened was last summer, Governor Polis's Colorado Energy Office went to the PUC and said, hey, PUC, we think you ought to consider new emissions targets for the natural gas system. So the fuel that goes to about 2/3 of the state's homes to keep us warm in the winter.
2/3?
Yep, 2/3. A lot of folks use it for cooking, obviously. Some appliances run off of it. They said, we think you ought to set new targets of a 41% emission reduction requirement by 2035. I won't get into too far of the weeds of all the wonky details, but that's a pretty substantial jump.
Insane.
It is, because current law set it at 22% by 2030, which was actually passed in a bill. This 41% target was never in any legislation.
So the people we elected
Yes.
didn't make this decision.
That's right.
The people that the governor appoints,
right.
Again, the shadow, and that's the story of the Polis years will be a story of transfer of power from elected officials to appointed minions.
That's right. So Polis's appointee, Will Tour, head of the Colorado Energy Office, goes to Polis's appointees on the PUC, all three of the commissioners, says, please set this as a rulemaking. They open this rulemaking process. We at the Independence Institute, we filed comments talking about what this would do to the economy. All the utilities filed comments, labor groups, the community of Pueblo filed comments, all saying, hey, whoa, guys, you haven't even met the 22% target. And all the utilities said that to meet that target, we would have to blow the budget of our utility bills. We think you ought to pump the brakes here. To their credit, the Polis administration came back and said, okay, we hear you. We'll accept a 31% emission reduction target. So still higher than we would like, but they at least said, okay, we understand you're concerned. Leave it to the PUC to come back and say, we're upholding the stringency of what you originally wanted. We're establishing a 41% target by 2035. And not only that, even though they weren't required to do this in this rulemaking, they said utilities also need to plan for a 100% emissions reduction target by 2050 in order to meet the broader climate goals of the state. So even the Polis administration didn't say anything about that, but the PUC went out of its way to say, we think you need to plan for it, an entire phase out of natural gas.
These people are disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
They actually believe that we can have zero emissions in 25 years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it goes back to the unelected part, because these folks, they don't have to face voters. They get to sit in their comfy 4-year term appointed position and say, yeah, I know these people are mad about the costs and what it's going to do to energy bills, but that's not really our problem. We think that you need to uphold the most stringent reading of the state's climate policy, and that's what they did.
One of the reasons why I believe we need to have an elected PUC that is responsible directly to us, not this bureaucratic, unelected The point is, so help me with some tiny little problem. I know you can have heat pumps. Heat pumps are actually pretty energy efficient.
Yep.
They're an electric way to heat and cool. So up in the mountains, do heat pumps work?
They work. Let me clarify. The most expensive cold climate heat pumps will work in the mountains when temperatures get cold. They lose their efficiency at that point. And so even the National Renewable Energy Lab, or I forget what Trump just recently renamed it, but Colorado's NREL, the artist formerly known as NREL, put out a study last year that actually looked at this and looked at Colorado, did all 50 states, but Colorado specifically found that for folks that are currently heating their homes with natural gas, regardless of where you are in the state, if you transition to a heat pump, I think it was only something like, for the lowest efficiency, cheapest heat pump, which won't work in the mountains, 20% of households will see that pencil out, that investment will pay off for them. If they actually switch to the one that will work in Colorado's cold winters, 0% of homes will come out financially ahead from making this transition. So again, PUC sets a rule that ignores the best science. NREL, the people that they claim to love, because the NREL puts out all the stuff about the clean energy transition, says, hey, this doesn't make a lick of financial sense. And they said, too bad, so sad. This is what state law says. This is what our regulations need to do to get us to our climate policy end goal.
Play this out with me. As you know, because you work for me, I'm not the brightest bulb. So you use tiny words here. So we're going to take what is now 2/3 of our electricity portfolio, which is natural gas and coal, and that's going to be phased out now by 2050, and depending on what they do in this session, could be potentially in 15 years in 2040. Which means that everything's going to have to be replaced with electric heaters, electric power, electric cars. That means no natural gas, no gasoline. Everything is going to be electrified, which takes a lot of power. Every park and rec, every school department that has a swimming pool, every big office building, all of that is going to be gone. I'm assuming that this means our demand for electricity is going to go skyrocketing. At the same time, we're taking away 2/3 of what we make our power out of. So pencil that out for me, how that works.
The short of it is it doesn't. You hit the nail on the head of the defining issue in energy policy right now, not just in Colorado, although Colorado is sort of on the bleeding edge of doing this. But yes, it's a story of energy subtraction on the supply side with electricity, because we're shuttering coal plants. We're even shuttering some natural gas plants that are old. We're putting a noose around utilities saying you can build some natural gas, but we're not going to let you build the amount of natural gas that you think you need to keep the lights on, because once again, got to take care of the climate. At the same time that we're intentionally adding new sources of demand with electric vehicles, heat pumps, you name it, electrification is what they call it. Oh, and by the way, the market has its say too, because there's these things called data centers that I don't know if you heard about. I'm sure folks listening have heard about these as well, that are going to support our modern digital economy going forward. And those things use a whole heck of a lot of power too. And so it's the folly of trying to centrally plan energy policy. The market has its say too. People need this stuff to support our modern economy.
When you say market, could I substitute the word reality?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Take your pick, whatever word you want to use, but all of that amounts to an unprecedented level of new electricity demand, the kind that we haven't seen since we really developed as a country, at the same time that we're hobbling our energy supply. And that is why you see so many utilities with heartburn and so many grid operators with heartburn. None of that seems to have really penetrated Colorado policymakers just yet, but that is the reality we find ourselves in.
So growing up in Colorado, I have never seen preemptive power outages to stop forest fires or other fires. Never seen it. And then Marshall comes along, the Marshall Fire, which Xcel was found partly liable for. And lo and behold, in our last windstorm, I've lived in Boulder since the early 80s, we've had windstorms like that all the time. This is the first time they've turned off power. Power to my house was shut off for a day and a half. And I heard from Kyle Clark that he took on the Republicans who said, this is because of green policy that did it. And he said, no, this was Xcel turning off the power. It had nothing to do with mandates. But then I read a column from an incredible writer, which was me. And I said to myself, no, because, and tell me if I got this right, when Xcel spends money on new toys, new power plants, new windmills, new power lines, all they get to charge us for that plus a guaranteed profit on top, 10 to 15%, whatever it is. But when it comes to maintaining their old crap, they can charge us for what it costs, but they don't make any extra money. And given that we have a capacity that customers can only suck up so much cost, they've chosen to build the new profitable stuff at the expense of maintaining. So my argument is, no, it is the green, just because these Republicans can't articulate it the right way. No, Kyle, the green policies pushed by this state, in fact, did cause these power outages. Yes? No?
It certainly played a healthy role. You and I are both free marketeers. What do we always say as free marketeers? That incentives matter. And all of the incentives over the last 10 plus years for Xcel have been to close coal plants, close natural gas plants, build wind, solar, and batteries and transmission lines.
When you say incentives, you mean the government mandates, not that the marketplace that somehow they found out, hey, wind power is cheaper or solar power is cheaper to build. No, they found, no, that's really expensive. And without the mandated regulations, the mandated clean energy mandates, they wouldn't be building any of this.
That's a great point. Incentive is not the right word for that. It's
a
actual
market
de facto mandates from the legislature.
A market manipulation.
Yeah, they actually said, you shall fuel switch Xcel, you shall do this to meet these carbon goals. So yes, the mandates, but the incentives then for Xcel are to go further than what the mandates are, because they say, hey, the people that are passing these laws want us to go this direction, and we think we can squeeze a little more profit if we go a little further there. And to your point, they start investing in new things, new capital expenditures. That's the stuff that they can earn a rate of return on, see that as a government guaranteed profit, unlike anything else. And if you're watching here and you own a business, there's no such thing as a government guaranteed profit for you, but a monopoly utility gets one. And then you have things like the nuts and bolts of maintaining your old, boring distribution lines, which to your point, just making sure that the brush is cleared off of that thing doesn't really earn the same thing as building a
Cutting down the trees by power lines is maintenance.
Right.
And therefore, during windstorms, you don't have to worry about it if you maintain it. But there's no incentive to do that.
That's right.
That's what I mean by, no, this is the fault of green energy policy in Colorado.
And the other piece of it is Xcel could, this is something they could earn a rate of return on, is if they had an open dialogue and said, we hear you, you guys are concerned about these wildfire risks. We're going to do a big project to bury our existing distribution lines to make sure that they're free from wind risk or trees falling on them or whatever. But all of the attention has been focused on no, don't replace existing distribution lines and bury them. You've got to build new transmission to connect to these big shiny wind farms that we're building out on the Eastern Plains. So there's only so much that Xcel can do, right? I know it's a big company, but it can't do everything all at once. All of the political attention has been on building the new stuff. Instead of, things that do cost money, it would be expensive to bury all these power lines, but if the voters want it, that theoretically could be the policy focus of Xcel. Instead, it's not, and this is the result we get.
And I'm not a fan of Xcel or any government-run monopoly. That being said, Colorado State government is very good at making companies look bad. The hospital provider bed tax, they call it the bed fee, is not allowed to be put on your hospital bill. So who do you get angry at? The hospital. Well, by law, we can't tell you that you're paying 10, 15% more because them.
Right.
Here, it's the same thing. We're going to get angry at Xcel. The governor's going to wail, bad Xcel. It's like, no, you created the incentive for Xcel to fail us.
Yep.
You're the reason this is happening.
Yeah, it is 100% a creature of deliberate state policy. Xcel, there's plenty of things that you can ding Xcel for. It does things that we've been critical in the past, for sure. But all of this is a deliberate result of policy. The state government long ago realized that they could use this monopoly utility that normally they would hate a big corporation, but they realized we can use this guy as a vessel for our broader green ambitions. And Xcel benefits because they get those delicious, sweet government guaranteed profits. And that's the relationship that Colorado ratepayers have been faced with for at least the last 10 years. And Amy, my colleague Amy Cook, you mentioned, she always likes to say, getting mad at Xcel for this stuff is sort of like getting mad at a rattlesnake for biting you. I get it, but it's doing what it does, right? Xcel building this stuff and focusing on chasing profits, that's what that creature does. That's what its incentives are. And if the government is enabling it, the ultimate accountability and responsibility lies with those lawmakers that allowed that to happen.
I might try an analogy, something like, it's like getting mad at the car that hit you, not the drunk driver driving it. because somebody made this happen.
That's right.
And it wasn't the car, it was the drunk driver. All right, give me something, man, because this is depressing. So we're going to be out of power. It's not going to work. People are going to freeze. And in the winter time, it's going to be expensive. But now in the summertime, that's going to be peak there's going to be brownouts. There's going to be blackouts. And I believe part of the reason we have those shutdowns was to condition customers that this is part of a new reality. So you better buy some batteries. You better buy a generator. You better hire the electrician to come in because this is coming. And we're getting you acclimated to this. Give me some good news.
If I can give you a little bit of a silver lining from all of this, is that having that multi-day power outage, you said you're out for about a day and a half or 2 days. Some folks up to 4 days, I heard 4 or 5 days.
And then I was out for a half a day, a couple days after that too.
Right, yeah, there was another one where the power went out. I think it was a nice reminder for people about how bad it is when this stuff goes wrong. We are blessed to live in a very rich society, a very comfortable society, a relatively wealthy state, Colorado, even compared to the rest of the U.S. We don't get to have to think about a lot of these things a lot of the time. And when something bad happens, you're reminded just how vulnerable you are, just how much you're reliant on technology like electricity just to go about your daily life and to take care of your family. And I have to hope that leaves things top of mind for voters, that when they do come back this session, for instance, and say, all these climate goals that we're really struggling to meet with already, I think we ought to put the pedal to the metal of that. I do hope that light bulb goes off in voters' minds and say, no. I just spent 4 days without power in the winter.
How wrong am I to go this way? No, I hope they pass it. I hope they pass it because the sooner the wheels come off of this crazy thing, the sooner we can get back to normality. That this is heading over a cliff. It's kind of like our national debt. I would rather deal with it sooner than when it explodes later. Bring it on.
I hear you. The only thing I would say back to that is that just the risks are just so high.
People are going to die.
We got extremely fortunate that this shutoff, this public safety power shutoff, was during a very mild time of year. We've had a relatively mild winter in Colorado. Had it been as cold as it normally is in late December or in early January in Colorado, we could have seen a body count. And so that's where I say, no, politicians need to sober up. The PUC needs to sober up because the stakes are just that high.
People want to get more information. Where do they go?
Go to i2i.org. They can go to i2i.org/energy for our energy stuff, or they can just go to i2i.org to check out
thinkfreedom.org is fast.
Thinkfreedom.org, powergab.org. You can see our entire back catalog of PowerGab episodes if you folks want to nerd out on energy policy.
There's nothing sexy.
All the cool kids are watching PowerGab.
You want to get your wife in the mood? PowerGab.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it.
And then
in the mood to leave you, I think.
And Complete Colorado, our writings, they're published there quite a bit too. So,
sir, thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime, John.
Think Freedom. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.